Hi everyone, welcome to another stock market weekly update. It is the 13th of Jan. I'm going to record this in two parts just because it's so long and there's so much to cover. So let's get on with it. Valuations on a price earnings ratio basis. Still, energy is looking cheap compared to most other sectors. And within the banks and the diversified financials, they're also looking cheap on a price to profits, share price to profits perspective. What you also get, actually, what I wanted to highlight was you also get on that basis, well, Apple's pretty cheap, 21, even though relative to oil, it's more expensive. But Meta's coming in cheap on that one as well. Tesla, not quite yet at the moment. In terms of performance of the past week, everything went up. Obviously, energy and financials went up because they're undervalued, with the exception of healthcare. That didn't go up, not because it's overvalued, but simply, I suspect, because it's had such a good run, there's some profit taking and it's been an opportunity to get into some of the others. I am hearing more talk of tech having a good year this year, which seems interesting given that rising interest rates have punished tech. Amazon, look at that. Tesla, that might have bottomed. And if you look at my Telegram channel or elsewhere on YouTube, you'll see that I projected a possible 200% rise for that company in just this year from the bottom it's at. Price earnings growth ratio, another measure of valuation, which is the share price compared to the rate of growth of profits. If the number's below 1, that suggests it's undervalued. Energy only really getting you there. And Tesla again, wow. Okay, and insurance companies coming in cheap. Where are we on the S&P 500? Just make myself smaller. And this is where we are now. What's interesting is we've gone back up. Now, you'll notice this downward trend kept getting hit by the S&P 500 and then dropping. Okay, so it hits, drops, hits, drops. Well, what it's doing at the moment is it's done a U-turn. If it breaks above that, which has come as a surprise to me, but if it does, then it means this monthly MACD's bottomed, and that could mean, you know, a bit of a rally, actually. It could mean we start hitting the new highs of the year in the first half of the year. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen. I'm going to wait a week to see if that does break above. But that could well happen, and that's been a surprisingly strong start to the year. Okay, Apple, this is what happens when a company falls below its support. So it's fallen below, but if, as I projected previously, it goes back to that support, which will then become a resistance, you're looking at a 23% return in the next year on Apple. Okay, has it bottomed on the MACD? No, and that's why we're having to wait a little bit longer before we buy more Apple. I already own some of it. Where are we on Microsoft? Well, it's going in its trend. Sorry, this trend image, my assistant sort of dropped the image. But what we're looking at is it's dropped 40% from its peak. Am I getting in yet? No, because that needs to just bottom out a bit more, please, for my liking before we look to get in. Okay, now Amazon did severely fall below its support, and this is what happens when it does. But look at that rally, and if it continues from the base that we drew there, and we called the bottom pretty much spot on, then that's a 50% return. Okay, that we would be looking at. I continue holding my Apple, I continue holding my Meta, which again, now you're seeing the monthlies starting to flatten out more, led by the price. That's the projection, were it to get to all-time highs, and that projection is, as you can see, for more than a year away to get to those all-time highs, and that would give you, well, a phenomenal return. Costco dropped below support, and then, like with Apple, started moving back up in the right direction. It's a bit more overbought than Apple, and therefore let's just see what happens. Again, I'm afraid it's a bit of a let's see what happens next week with that one. PayPal, that's what it looks like when something falls, wrong foots you, and then starts to rise again. So this, if we need that to go a bit flatter, I actually want it to go a little bit, just a tiny bit higher, which will happen when the price moves a bit more, and then I'll be more confident of getting that 42% from that bottom, which we called a while back. Okay, Halliburton, well, you can see from that the monthlies are rising, the weekly MACD's rising, and it's on target. That was the bottom we called before, and we said if it goes to just this support here, you're still looking at 81% return. May well do more than that. Marathon Oil, that's what worries me. Okay, that could be falling. That could be falling quite soon because it's quite overbought, which means this fall below the support could end up going a bit lower. I'm not sure it will, but it could. Equally, it could do what Apple's done and move up, as opposed to what Meta did when it was overbought and went down. So, yeah, it's that phrase again. Let's just wait another week, see what happens before we make a decision. Occidental, as you know, I own. That's where it is. It is overbought, though. If you're risk averse, you're getting ready. If there's any sizable drop, you want to be getting out because it is overbought. So we'll wait, see another week what happens. Devon, it's similar to previously. This is what happens when something does get a bit toppy and then starts falling. Okay, so you can see how it dropped below the support and then goes a bit more, goes sideways. Is it worth holding? Not when it's like that. Marathon Petroleum, okay, that's at an earlier stage on this MACD cycle. It hasn't got flat and it hasn't dropped. It's at the rising phase, or well, we can call it one rising phase. Then there's the flattening and then there's the falling. It is just at the rising phase, which means that could, you know, it's still well worth holding. Adobe is an example of a company, a tech company, looks great, does great, goes up, then falls all the way. Where are we with that? That's not quite flattened, but when it does, who knows? Maybe that's the goal of basically almost doubling your money with it. I'll do part 2 of the presentation on a separate video just because of file sizes. Thank you very much for following that. Got a whole bunch of other Bellwether companies to take you through in the next part. Thank you.